Can you
Okay.
open number 11?
Take two. Welcome, everyone. This is the third in the series of three, so it's the last one for the year, of celebration events. Why can I not talk today?
It's Friday.
It's Friday. That must be it. This is the 13th
Yes.
annual Hero Appreciation Months. My wife Leah and I have been running it since the beginning, so thank you for letting us do that.
Well, thank you for doing it.
Oh.
Yes.
It wasn't the intent, but thank you very much.
One of our artists in the corner and another.
And really the reason the whole program started is because when we moved to Three Rivers, one of the first things we discovered is that a very high percentage of the adult population within Three Rivers has been at one time, or currently still is, one of the first responders. Law enforcement, firefighter, peace officer, EMS, EMT, veterans of multiple different agencies. In some cases, one individual is all three, could be all five. So it's a surprising community in that sense. And the other thing we learned is that while it is really wonderful that these individuals put their lives out there on the line so that we can have the life that we live, we realized they really can't do it without the support of their families. So the Hero Appreciation Month's celebrations and the whole 3-month-long event was created to celebrate not only the first responders themselves, but the families that allow them to do what they do. So it's really a way to say thank you, and that's why those discount cards are called thank you cards. Part of the Hero Appreciation Months, of course, are these recognition award things where we have, every year it's a different artist, or sometimes a couple of artists that get together to create a one-of-a-kind award for the people being honored. And we'll get to this year's award in a little while. But also, in the past, each month we honor, the first month in January is law enforcement, first month in January is firefighter, second month is law enforcement, and then the third month, March, is armed forces, current and former. And we'll also get to that in a moment. But included in that are family-oriented celebrations. And at one time or other, we've had a snowman building contest in Waxahachie that on the years where there was actually snow on the ground was pretty successful. On the years where there was no snow, it was really hard to build a snowman. We also have had a whole month of square dancing, which was also fairly successful. But the one thing that's been fairly consistent since we started it in the 3rd or 4th year that we were doing Hero Appreciation Months, and it's continued unabated since every year, and it's happening again tomorrow. It'll be the 10th annual. It's the bathtub race. And the bathtub race, like I said, is tomorrow. We think we may have as many as 6 teams participating.
Wow.
And yeah, I know it'll be either total chaos or it'll be a lot of fun, or probably both.
And there's even water in the lake to put it.
There's even water in the lake. You're absolutely right. And it's going to be a gorgeous day, like today. We've had the bathtub races in 100-degree heat. We've had the bathtub races in 30 degrees and rain. So since we all know we're going to get wet anyway, it doesn't matter. And each year the winner gets to donate a pool of money that's collected from the entry fee to the charity of their choice. And this year's pool is how much?
Oh, we have $1,400 in the charity pot.
So it'll be a fun event. Okay, you
What
did
time
not.
here? What time tomorrow?
Okay, it starts, the construction starts at 11:30, and it's at Kauai Recreation, which is the second boat ramp as you're heading east. So if you're coming out of Lemon Cove, you pass Lemon Hill, and it's the next one. Ramp number 2.
Did you know that was Kauai Recreation?
Yeah, it actually has a name, Kauai Recreation.
No one calls it that.
It's the one with the big silver water tank on the side. Okay.
Yeah, and we picked it because whether it's a high water year or a low water year,
It's a good spot.
they're
Yeah,
double
you could actually
parking.
get
You have
to
a
it.
dock
Yeah.
for either one, parking for either one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, you did not come here to listen to me. You did come here to help us honor one of our recipients. So to do the introductions, Leah.
Okay, Tom Marshall, it's your turn.
Come on up.
I think most people know you for all your work with the
No, this way.
museum. It's like I put him in the corner or something, you know, bad boy. All his work volunteering with the Historical Society and the museum, but not everybody knows the other parts of your life, and I know you're really proud of your service, and I've heard a few stories, and I'd love to hear some more. And the community wanted to honor you, they figured it was your turn. So,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Go ahead, tell us what you want to.
Ooh, boy, where do I start?
Oh, we have 57 minutes.
And we have your bio.
Here, I'll keep my cheat sheet.
Where were you born?
Where was I born? I was born under a rock in Whittier Rural, which is actually now Artesia, California, if anybody knows where that is.
Yep.
Norwalk, Lakewood, actually,
Yeah.
Dairy Valley,
Dairy
kind of
Land.
dairy country
Yeah.
there,
Hawaiian
Dairyland, yes. And that,
Where was that streets there? That was considered?
well,
Pioneer Boulevard.
our house, this is my little sister Linda Rouet. Our house was, which is now, there is still a tree or two in an on-ramp from Carson Boulevard around to the southbound 605 freeway. And our house sat in the middle of that circle. Until
Took out the
about
whole neighborhood.
1958, 59,
I think it was a little later.
was it a little later?
About 63
Wasn't
or
it,
something.
yeah, I
Oh,
thought
could
it
have
was
been
early
because
sixties on that
We
one.
actually, my folks sold it to a nurseryman, and he eventually, I believe, ended up moving the house. Dad built that house in 1942,
I think he started building it in 38.
39.
Then every couple of years he added on.
Yeah, I have to go to her to find out all this. But anyway, my first 14 years was there, riding my bike and enjoying the elementary school. Of course, we were at the borderline of Artesia and Hawaiian Gardens,
Yeah.
and I always like to tell the story that I would get on my bike when I was in the 7th grade, I think, and get on my bike and start riding east, and I would ride my bike to Knott's Berry Farm. And the only thing between our house and Knott's Berry Farm was orange trees and
Yep.
avocado trees
Yep.
and lemon
It
trees.
was all orchard.
And now you can't find any of those trees in that area. But enjoyed that very much. And then I would ride, on one or two occasions, I rode from there, if you remember, from Knott's Berry Farm, I'd ride towards Anaheim. And I'd go up on this big berm of dirt, and I'd sit there watching them build Disneyland. So that was my early years.
Is that where you went?
That was when you
That's
were.
where I went.
That was
All
when you
day,
were.
and half the night, I think.
And I remember I was probably 8 years old, and Tom says, let's go to the beach. So we got on our bicycles, and we rode to Belmont Shore or something.
Yeah.
Mom says, you're gonna what? I'm like 8.
Yes, they had to practically come and get her for the return trip.
That's when you could go to Ghost Town at Knott's Berry Farm for free.
Right.
Yeah.
That was date night when I was in high school.
Actually, when-
Because it was free.
Yeah.
When I was about this big, Knott's Berry Farm consisted of the chicken house and.
And a berry stand.
Yes, and the berry stand.
Our grandmother was good friends with Walter Knott's
Yes.
wife.
Oh, with Cordelia, yeah.
Yeah.
And they actually worked together at producing one of the variations of the boysenberry.
Well, Boyson worked for him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was he's the, yeah.
So, anyway, that was my early years. Went to Lakewood High School, went to Long Beach City College for a couple of years and decided I've got to do something different. Well, when I was in high school, I decided I didn't want to get in the draft and be called into the Army and crawl around on my stomach for the next 4 years or something. So I joined the Naval Reserve. I wanted to do it anyway because Dad was a quartermaster on the Maryland, which was a battleship in the 1930s. And grandfather, if I got it right, he was Indiana Cavalry?
Yeah, he
Something
was
like
in the
that?
Spanish-American War.
Yeah, Spanish-American War.
And then his father was in the Union Army for the Civil War,
Yeah.
as well as his father and 3 or 4
That was a
brothers.
couple of years before my time.
years.
But I had the opportunity, the 1 year when I was in high school, that I went to, I got on a bus with a friend of mine that I went to school with, Jim Cross, I don't know why I remember that name. But we got on a Greyhound bus all by ourselves in Los Angeles and went to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and spent the summer in a little resort called the Jenny Lake Resort in the Grand Tetons. And that was an experience that I really enjoyed. It just was really different. So after that, I decided while I was at Long Beach City College, it was time to do my active duty 2.5 years with the Navy. You had to put in at least that much in a 6-year term. So I put on my blue and white costume and with my Dixie cup, that's what we called them, and went to Terminal Island. I was there about a day and a half when they sent me to the USS Toluga, an oiler, refueling oiler for other ships. And I thought, this isn't a carrier, this is not a destroyer. This doesn't sound like much fun.
Floating service
Yeah,
station.
floating service station, that's right. So I got on board ship and I can, to this day, see myself going up the ramp, checking in. They had a bosun's mate take me down below to a bunk down there to stow my sea bag, and said, okay, go up to the sick bay in the rear of the ship, and they'll tell you what to do up there. Okay. So I went up there, and I wasn't on that ship more than 20 minutes, and I had a paintbrush in my hand. and I looked at the guy next to me who hadn't been there more than about 2 days himself, and I set the paintbrush down on the can in front of me. It was white, of course. It was sick bay. So with that, I said, I'm going to go up to the ship's office. I'm going to tell them I'm a yeoman striker. That's what I studied for when I was in the reserve. And he said, oh, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You just don't get up and go do something on your own. Well, people in this town right today know me that I don't do things like that.
Not at all.
But when we are young.
Yeah. So I went up to the ship's office, which was towards the middle of the ship, and climbed the ladders, got up to the hatch or the doorway, and it was open, and there was about 3 sailors, 2 sailors and a chief petty officer in there, and the one petty officer, yeoman, was opening up a big brown envelope, and he had just gotten these orders to, I believe, an aircraft carrier. And I thought, well, this must be my day. So I turned and looked at the chief and looked around the room there. And the chief asked me what I wanted, and I said, I'm here, and I'm ready to take his job. And he asked me, well, you gotta be trained for this. And I said, I am. I did it in the reserves for 2 years. So that's how I got my job.
What does that mean, yeoman striker? What is that?
Yeoman, to begin with, is office staff.
Secretary.
Secretary, yes.
It did all the paperwork.
Yes, did all the paperwork, all of the transferring, all of the, you name it, and, yes. Yes, we had the modern day upright typewriter, royal typewriters at the time. Didn't have electric cords to them, so.
What does striker mean?
The striker really means I was a yeoman wannabe. So I was training
You were
to be a
striking out to be a
yeoman,
yeoman.
but I had gone to, I think it was the second or third level of being a striker, so I was ready to take the test, a third-class petty officer, dungarees, as they called them.
Yep.
And that was, the hatch that I walked in was over here, and
You made yourself at home, you got your feet up on the
Yeah.
desk.
I know, those are
I
good.
had been in the
Pass
office
it around.
about, I guess about 4 months or 5 months into 65 when that picture was
Who
taken.
took the picture?
I believe
Was there a desk across from you?
Bob Merritt took it.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I have, there's one friend that I haven't seen in 50 years.
Yeah.
And he lives in St. Louis, but I've communicated, 2 or 3 times with him through the internet. And he was an electronics technician aboard the ship, and so we kind of buddied around, going different places and such. But my jobs on the Toluca, I was kind of the end of the spectrum a little bit. I did transfers in and out of sailors coming and going from the ship. I went to San Diego for a couple of weeks and I was trained to be a court-martial yeoman and take recordings of court-martials and, or as they call it, captain's mass aboard the ship, summary court-martials, all that legal stuff. Forgot it all as soon as I left the ship. But my most rewarding part, I think, of my job aboard ship was I was also the education yeoman. Not a teacher, but I actually had the opportunity to work with, order, and go over textbooks for the guys that were trying to get their GED or high school diploma.
Oh, yeah.
And then I would actually be their proctor to test when they had to take their written tests. And they'd turn it into me and then I would send it off, and then when it came back approved and they actually got their GED and high school diploma, then the captain and I would present it to them and so forth. So that was
Very cool.
pretty rewarding as far as
Yeah.
that goes. But along the way, there was many different things that occurred. I have to this day, and Dodie's seen it probably more than she wants to admit, I have a file folder that's actually a government personnel file folder that has, because I was a yeoman, I made copies with carbon paper, if anybody remembers that, of any orders and things that I did. So I have a copy of all that. But in addition to that, every time I wrote a letter off that ship to do something, I was always promoting something.
Some things don't change.
But I have a copy of every one of those letters that I sent.
Oh, cool.
And as an example, well, 2 examples, 2 stories. I'll cut them under an hour. I was sitting there, and my station aboard ship, when there was refueling going on, I was on the port side, or the left side, up on what they called the flying bridge on the ship, and I was a ship-to-ship phone talker. I would be standing next to the captain of our ship, and I was talking to a yeoman on an aircraft carrier or a cruiser that was on the left side of the ship, being refueled by our gas station. And so I got to thinking one day that I would love to have a picture of one of the carriers being refueled by the Toluga. And it just so happens that this was the Midway that came up. I don't remember the exact date, but I do know it was around May of '65. And just tonight, right? I was looking at, maybe it's nostalgia or something, I was looking at YouTube, and I found a clip that a sailor had taken from the Midway, being refueled by the Toluga on May 5th of '65. So I had to have been standing on that flying plane.
We're there somewhere.
Did you
At the
recognize
time,
yourself?
no, it was a little fuzzy at that point. But, so I got to thinking, well, I'd love to have a picture of this refueling, because there was a destroyer on the other side. And to branch off just a little bit, when you're out in the ocean and you're refueling, you all have to stay in one straight line. Otherwise, there's collisions that happen. And that's another story I'll tell later. But the aircraft carrier is sitting like this in the ocean, and it's kind of just doing this. And we're here, and of course we have 5 million gallons of aviation fuel below decks in this big bubble underneath the ship. And so we're pretty steady. They're going up and down just a little bit. And while we're refueling the aircraft carrier, there's destroyers over here. Now destroyers are about 1/10 the size of that carrier. And while it's here, we're here, the destroyer's over here like this, in the waves, trying to refuel. And it was quite an experience.
How big is this ship?
The one that I was on?
Yeah.
634 feet long, had a complement of 348 sailors and officers. I remember that because I was young.
I was on a destroyer and they're about 414 feet long.
Is it?
414 feet, and they have 150 crew members.
And that was what?
A destroyer.
Yeah,
A
that's
destroyer.
right, that's right, yeah. And while we refueled an aircraft carrier, there may have been 3 to 5 destroyers over there that just kept taking turns running through the refueling. So anyway, back to my story about the picture. We got off the refueling, I immediately went down, I wrote a letter to every photographic officer of every aircraft carrier in the Pacific at that time. Just telling them that I would love to have pictures of refueling from the Toluga, or at least of the ship and some type of refueling. Well, over the next several weeks, I got pictures from the USS Yorktown, the Independence. There was about 4 of them that sent me pictures, but the one that stood out was the Midway. And that refueling in May of '65, they actually sent a helicopter crew up just to take a picture and then send it to me. And they knew, or they checked into it to find out, because I told them I've got a few friends that I would like to give pictures, so if they could send me maybe 5 or 6 pictures. About 3 weeks later, I received a package and they had 350 8x10 of the Midway being refueled by the Toluga with a destroyer on the other side. And I still have 2 or 3 of them left, but I gave one to everybody on the ship.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
Now,
awesome.
this really kind of started it with me and my chief, who was above me for administration on the ship. He was a personnelman, I was a yeoman, really meant that he was more transfer type person and that kind of thing, but he was a chief and I was just a lonely sailor over there. He kept telling me, you want something like that done, you go through channels. Well, you know me today, I don't always go through channels. I go directly to whatever I want to get done, so. That kind of set him off a little bit, and that's kind of the way my next 2 years went.
Oh, boy.
But,
Isn't he the one that didn't let you go to your grandfather's funeral?
No, that was our executive officer,
It was him.
yes. Yeah, in June of '65, my grandfather passed away, and my mother sent through the Red Cross a telegram saying that they would like to have me come home, and I wrote back and said, I can't, I'm in the middle of the South China Sea, and can't do it, so. She would have to answer that. I guess the family understood when they got the
I
telegram.
guess so, yeah. I just don't call.
But
They did, of course.
I had different experiences with different things that I wrote for. I really enjoyed the Peanuts cartoon strip. And we tried to look at them whenever the newspapers would come on board and that kind of a thing. So I wrote to the publishers in New York City, another one of my letters. I have a copy. And I told them I would love to have a few copies of their pocketbooks. If you remember, they used to have them with the little cartoons in them and so forth. And so nothing happened, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, I guess, a box comes for me from New York City. And it was a box about like this. And it was full of Peanuts pocketbooks that I could distribute around the ship.
Oh, how sweet.
But there was a letter on top of it,
Uh-oh.
and I still have the letter, that says, be watching for something else in the next 2-3 weeks. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a envelope from Sebastopol, California. I still have it, and it is a pen and ink drawing of all the Peanuts characters standing side by side, signed by Charles Schultz.
Oh,
But it's missing Woodstock because Woodstock wasn't in the picture quite yet. So, but I still have that. It's just like an 8 by 10,
oh.
and I really watch over that thing. It meant a lot. Well, the chief didn't think too much of that either. But like I said, I wrote letters for a number of different things. I did not know Dodie at the time.
Did you give the chief any of this stuff?
Yes, I made sure he got one of the Midway pictures, and I gave him one of the pocketbooks. In fact, I set it on his desk, and I never got a response out of him, one way or the other. But fortunately, I guess for me, when one of the trips that we pulled into Subic Bay in the Philippines to refuel us so we can go back across the South China Sea to Vietnam, my chief got transferred.
Oh,
Shucks.
Wow.
So there was a second-class yeoman, personnelman in the office with me, and so he and I pretty much ran the ship's office for the rest of the time I was on it. One of the things I enjoyed was being an education yeoman. I had to have a place to put the different manuals and different books for these GED tests and everything. Well, the ship's office sat halfway up the main area of the middle of the ship, and it was on one of the upper decks. And the ship's office was there, the officer's country, as they called it, was in front of it. Well, around the side, underneath that flying bridge that I would stand on, was a closet with a hatch and everything. So I asked the captain one day, I got along great with the captain, that was Captain Colleran. And he says, well, what do you want to do with it? I explained to him I wanted to do a place where I could have the education stuff and the court martials, things like that. So he said, fine, go ahead and do that. So I turned that into my office.
Your storage compartment.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, I did that not too long after we left Long Beach to go to Vietnam, because when we got to Japan, I bought a camera and I bought the dark room supplies, and I used that little closet as my dark room, and I made enough money printing the pictures for the guys on the ship of their pictures so that I could get more stuff that everybody wanted. In fact, I distinctly remember I bought 2 sets of Noritake dishes.
Two
One
full
of the
sets.
one of the
You
sets, 2
said
full
one
sets. One of the sets went to Linda.
And two pachinko machines.
Yes, 2. Yes.
Big ones, like, yeah.
So,
It
it
sounds like
was just,
McHale's Navy.
but it was something. It just,
Did you go swimming?
oh. When you're standing on the ship in the South China Sea and it's summertime, you're almost to the equator, which I never did go across the equator. We almost tried once to go to Australia, but we didn't make it. We got turned around back to duty. But
It's a whole nother
it would
story.
be, it would be 150 of us that got to go first. So they stopped the ship and we all jumped in or dove into the ocean right at that point. Okay, wool swimsuit. Nowhere to be found. Now, obviously, there was no women on board the ship at this year, but the other thing that couldn't be found, there was no ship.
What?
And, well, we happened to park it at the mouth of one of these rivers, and the current coming out
Oh, pushed it, yes.
pushed everything just below the surface. So we turned around, we all looked at each other, turned around, and the Telugu was about a quarter mile away. And we were headed for Fiji or something. So they said on the loudspeaker from the ship, they were lowering the lifeboats to come and get us. And don't worry, we've put the sharpshooters in the small boats that were on the Teluga, so that if there are any sharks, we'll take care of them. So, but by the time they got there, I did locate my wool swimsuit. So we, in turn, all got back on the ship. They relocated the ship. We got to go back in again, and then in groups of about 50, everybody got to go in. And we spent the day doing that. But it's just one of those experiences that you will never forget. As you can tell, my life aboard ship was really rough compared to people like Roger
Yeah, he's an
Goulet,
infantry
Linda's
guy.
husband. He was in infantry a little later than I
He
was
was in the
in
jungle.
Vietnam. He was in the jungle carrying an 80.
Yeah,
80
an
pounds.
M60.
Oh,
Yes.
God, really?
Plus the ammo for it,
Yeah.
because he was the biggest guy.
And this is exactly what I didn't want to do, so. Anyway, going back to the book of letters that I sent and everything, again, I say that I didn't know Dodie at this point. It was a few years before I got to meet her. Many years before I
Yeah.
got to meet her.
Many years, yeah.
We met in Pasadena long after that.
So you survived.
But
and
I-
long enough to-
I said, when I first left, I took a dozen roses to my girlfriend. And every month, I wrote a letter with my money order for $4 to, because that's all they cost, to this florist in Lakewood. And every month, he delivered that dozen roses for the year that I was in Vietnam. I came back, I went to the florist, and I walked in, and this young guy was standing there, and I said, I'm here to get a dozen roses to give to my girlfriend. And he says, okay, that'll be $14. And I said, no, it's $4. Well, fortunately, Victor of Victor's Flowers happened to be in the back room at the time. And he came out and he says, he gets them for $4. Because he did it every month.
Yep.
Well, that's
I have a copy of every month. But it was just things like this that took place. Before I went on the Toluga, I would have to take 2-week cruises. The one, I think it was in about 1962 in the summer. I went to San Diego. I got on the USS Tenji, a destroyer, and we were going to go to Hawaii. Here I am, 17, 18 years old, and we get to go to Hawaii aboard ship. And I was already trying to be a yeoman, so I got to spend some time in the ship's office. Well, we left San Diego, and we headed for Hawaii, and at 2 minutes to 4 o'clock in the morning, the next day, the USS Vammon came from Long Beach, and they were meeting up with us, and so it was still dark. The Vammon came up, and they were turning
Get
to.
to the top.
Oh, well,
Or
there was
did you
about
take your
50 of us in that lower section of the destroyer, and we were all in their skivvies, and all 50 of us made it up 2 ladders to the port side of the ship in about 8 seconds.
What I wanna
Felt like
know
he
is, what
said.
I wanna know is, what happened to the girl you sent the roses to?
I ended up marrying her, we had a boy, and then we didn't have us. And a few years after that, I met this one, because I was her boss.
Does he still live?
No,
Did she get any roses?
Actually, yes. Tell them about Ohio State.
Yeah, he had to go to a seminar at Ohio State. I was working for U.S. Home at the time.
We were in
In Colorado Springs. And every day I would receive, 3 days in a row, I'd get a plant of some sort. And I finally called him up, and he was calling me, and I didn't get 3 plants until on the 3rd day. I got all 3. They were catching up, and he was calling each night to find out, and I never told him anything. When I finally said, I got these plants,
Stop sending.
stop sending them.
Still has the receipts.
Yeah,
Tell them about the time you talked your way into the Hong Kong telephone company.
oh, you were one of them I tried to reach.
Yeah.
We spent Liberty, and the ship was in the Hong Kong harbor in about August, I guess, of '65. And we actually got, I think it was 10 days in Hong Kong. And on this one particular trip, one of my buddies on the ship, he was one of the corpsmen. His father was one of the executives of Capitol Records. And so he knew people in Hong Kong. So they said, well, just come to the Star Ferry dock there in Hong Kong Harbor, and they'll meet you to take you on a little tour of Hong Kong. So sure enough, the three of us, there was all kinds of us getting off these boats and coming up on the dock. But there were three of us got met by a Mercedes limousine. So, yeah, it was quite an experience. And that same trip, they took us and we got on the Star Ferry, which is a very famous ferry in Hong Kong. Went from Hong Kong Harbor across the bay to Kowloon. And we were met by another limousine in Kowloon and took us out to see the countryside and everything. And so we actually got to have a real Chinese lunch up on this little hilltop. And I do have pictures, no letters, but I do have pictures. And it actually, it was a table about this big around. There was about 8 of us around the table, including, I think it was the vice mayor of Kowloon or something like that. But we could overlook the river down the hill, and the fence down the middle of the river divided us from China.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the Red Chinese. And we got to drive down close to the border there. So it just those kinds of experiences that we had in Hong Kong.
What about your 22nd birthday?
Oh, okay. One last story. One last story.
Okay.
This is probably the one I enjoyed the most. My 22nd birthday was in Sasebo, Japan, southern end of Japan. We left the ship. There was about 6 of us, all sailors, and this was the end of September of '65. So I left the ship. What I didn't know was that they went to the PX and got a Betty Crocker cake mix, and they had it under their coat, their pea coat. And so we went into Sasebo to a restaurant, and he gave this, he snuck off, in fact, I think it was Bob Merritt that did it. He took this cake mix and took it back in the kitchen and gave it to the cook back there. And so they baked the cake, the cook did, brought it out with one candle in it, and they sang happy birthday to me while the guys from the ship were singing happy birthday. Now the unique part about this whole thing was that we were in Sasebo, Japan, my 22nd birthday. We went to a Mexican restaurant run by a Chinese family.
It's like California.
Yes.
And they made you an American cake.
The cake went to the cook. The cook was the Chinese grandmother, who was about this tall, and she came out holding this pan about this big around and about that deep. And the whole cake mix was made in that pan. But it had a candle in it, and I mean, this lady was so excited. She was smiling from ear to ear. I didn't have the heart to tell her, none of us did, that you should have made it in 2 or 3 layers and a lot bigger, and no. So we cut it.
Tried to.
We almost had to break it apart. It tasted good, but we almost had to break it apart and that. So, but it was, that's just one of the things that you remember, among many, that, and
Out of curiosity, these are all fun things and everything. Did you ever get shot at?
oh yes. Yeah, in Vietnam, even aboard the tankers, we were followed for almost a year, about a mile behind us, by a Russian fishing boat with tall fishing poles that looked just like radio antennas. And every turn, everywhere we went, this trawler was behind us. following us. And when they went off to the side, we knew what was gonna happen. So we went to general quarters, being prepared for whatever, and about 5 minutes later, we would see these, behind us, these Russian MiG jets with red Chinese drivers coming down, and they would swoop down and shoot at us on both sides of the ship and then go back up again.
They're just warning
Never
shots. Yes.
warning shots. They never hit us. They were just trying to get us to go someplace else. Well, we didn't do that because we had to be there to refuel carriers and all that. And we knew when it was over and we could relax a little bit because there was the fisherman trawler right back in his
Back
position.
in position.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, it just, that was my experience.
Tsunami?
Oh, well, like I said, my last story was, it was just between Formosa, it was the Formosa Straits, between Formosa and China. And we were coming up from the South China Sea, and there was a typhoon out the other side of the island, way out there in the Pacific. So we went up this way, and we were just really pushing it, because we knew that we had to outrun this thing to get up to Japan. In fact, this was on our way back to the States, the end of the year. And we got almost to the top of Formosa when that typhoon said, nope, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna go down. And so we had to turn around and try to outrun it in a oiler with a top speed of about 12 miles an hour, or 10 knots, you know, whatever it is. And that, but it was the first time that I had really understood how tankers could actually break up, because I'd be up on the bridge or in my office, and I'd look at the bow of the ship, and it would be doing this, going back and forth. And I'd turn around, and the back of the ship was perfectly still. And then you could feel that wave go through that metal ship. And then ours would stop, and you'd see the back of the ship going like this. So,
Okay, Tom, let's see, we have some gifts for you. Okay, first of all, we get the certificate signed by Supervisor Crocker, thanking him for his service in the U.S. Navy. And, I don't know if y'all remember, but when we first started doing Heroes Months, we were running our bed and breakfast, so we would give as a gift certificate or coupon to come stay at our place. But when we retired, we knew we had to find somebody else, and the first person I thought to call was the Gateway, just, maybe. And they have done it ever since. They're like, yes. So the first year it was lodging, but a lot of us don't need that because we live here, right? So this year, Glenn and Susan have given a $50 gift certificate. It can be for the restaurant or lodging. So isn't that
nice.
sweet? And that's for every honoree. All right, and then, how we have an artist every year work really hard on a special, unique piece of art for you guys. This time, where's Christine? Come up, Christine. Christine Sell Porter was the artist this time. She made one for everybody, and everybody's is different. So you can see, it's a beautiful ceramic tray.
Wow.
She spent a lot of time in cutting the details in there and painting it, glazing it. And this one is a summer scene. She made everybody's different. There's a winter with snow on the mountains and spring and different. And you got the summer one. Isn't that lovely? And she punched holes up here so that you can hang it if you want that way, signed it. And it's actually a tray if you want to use it.
I'll turn it over to my interior decorator.
Can you see? It's hard to see all the details that she put in there. Also, there was trouble with the kiln when she was making this.
no.
Yeah, oh no. She was working at Louise's Flow Arts, up on top of the hill across from the Mercantile. The ceramic group meets there, they pitch in for the cost of the kiln. But one day, it busted. What was it, the lid broke?
Yeah.
It was like, everything in there was messed up, had to be pulled out, redone. Oh. Yeah, and she had finished really everything early on because she's so organized, and it was like she could tell me this sad story. And I was going, ask the Potters, the Ann and H.J. Brown, maybe, anybody I could think of who had a kiln.
But Lisa Finley helped me.
They did? Okay. Lisa. So there we go, another ceramic artist. So they helped each other out.
That is very nice.
And look at all the detail in the mountains.
Yeah.
Really?
Look at the detail in the wood of the trees.
Mhm.
Oh my God. How long
No,
did it
you
take
can't
you,
keep it.
Christine? I know. How long did it take you to make this?
I think I started in 2018 and finished in 2019.
Well, look, and she put the logo of the three silhouettes, so there's like a lady
Yeah.
firefighter, a city cop, and a Marine. That's what it's supposed to be, to symbolize the three categories of
Marine.
Marine, yes, sorry. Not Navy.
It's still part of.
Well,
Marine.
kind of Navy.
Yeah, it's still part of the Navy.
Thank you. This is really nice.
Thank you, Christine.
Yes.
Rising sun.
Yes, I like that. Am I done? Can I go home now?
Yes, you can. Hold that up. We need to take a picture.
All water.